What's going on, everybody? Tonight is the night. Put a lot of thought, a lot of work into this. The top 10 Romero villains in the entire Romero universe. Living Dead films, Martin, Crazies, Creep Show, Monkey Shines, The Dark Half, Bruiser, his entire filmography. The top 10 worst villains. I guess that's the way you'd want to put it. Top 10 Romero villains. It really is who is the biggest asshole of the bunch. So it's the who's scum of the earth? Who is the absolute worst human being to ever grace the celluloid of a George A. Romero film? We're going to count that down tonight, and I think I'm going. Like I said, I put a lot of work and a lot of thought into this. And if you would have asked me before I put this list together, if this is how I would have thought they would have turned out, I would have said no. But as I explained last week on the live stream, 3 criteria is what I'm going off of. First criteria, of course, is actor performance. The performance of the actor playing the villain, the character in this. Also going off of satisfying death. Did you hate this character so bad that when they finally got theirs in the end, you stood up and gave a round of applause? If so, that's going to score you some points. And the third and final category in which I am judging these characters and determining the order of the top 10 Romero villains. What was it? I'm blanking. What's the third category? Off to a great start already. Evil factor. What I call the old evil meter, which I couldn't think of another more creative name for that. But how evil was this character? Were they murderers? Were they just crazy? Were they? I mean, there are a lot of different. Let me see how I can put this. So I'm compiling this list. Obviously, there are different levels of evil that every character has. Were they right? Were they wrong? Did they come from a good place, but it just took them in the wrong direction? Were they murderers? Were they mass murderers? Were they tyrants? Did they oppress, large numbers of people? There's all kinds of different types of evil in the world, folks. I think we all know that. So yeah, took that into account as well. So those are your 3 categories. On a score of 1 to 10, I went through, spent more time on it than I'd like to admit. I'm sure some people are like, this is how you spend your free time. Yes, I'm a 34-year-old man sitting here at night with a notepad and crunching some numbers, trying to figure out who are the bottom of the barrel, the lowest of the low, the scummiest of scumbags, the top 10 Romero villains. So we're going to get to that. I'm not going to waste too much time before we get into the list because I got a lot to say about a lot of these characters and how they're portrayed in the film, their respective films that they're in, the performances of these characters by the actors that portray them. But I think first and foremost, I think this is a really good topic to discuss. Just in big picture wise, in terms of Romero and his filmmaking, doing this list and it's for fun. It's for the channel. It's for you guys to watch. You can disagree, agree. Like I said, like I've always said, at the end of these top 10 lists, like the top 10 zombie list that I did last month, if you disagree with this list, hit the dislike button. If you agree, hit the like button. Shoot me a comment down here in the down here below. Let me know what your top 10 is. Maybe you got maybe it's a completely different list than what I got. I'd love to hear. And if you vehemently disagree with my list, let me know why. I'm always down for a debate when it comes to Romero. But yeah, I think just to look at this as the overall picture of Romero's filmmaking and just the way Romero treated good and evil in his films. I think that's a good starting place before we actually get into the top 10. Just like I said, going through all these films and all these characters, there's a constant a constant thread through every Romero film from the beginning, from Night of the Living Dead all the way through Survival of the Dead. And I don't know how true this is of many other filmmakers. But Romero never used good and evil in a black and white sense. Every character in Romero's films has their good points and their bad points. And I think that's more true to life. And I also think that creates a dynamic when it comes to the characters in his films in terms of the climax of the film, because it's not like Romero could have never done a slasher film. He would have never done a Friday the 13th, where Jason is the obvious evil villain. He's also the major main bad guy in the movie. So at the end of the movie, when he finally gets his, good prevails over evil and everybody claps and walks out and nobody thinks anything of it, but that's the case in most films, not just slashers. I mean, Jaws. Jaws, the shark is obviously the evil. It's the villain, and when it goes down in the end, it's a satisfying conclusion. I mean, just any film you can think of in terms of action films, horror films. I mean, the Terminator. Terminator gets his in the end. He's obviously the evil to Linda Hamilton and Michael Bihn's good. That's just not the case with any Romero film that I can think of. Night of the Living Dead, of course not. Yes, Ben is portrayed more as the hero, but as we'll discuss here in a second, he was wrong, in my opinion. And this is a debatable thing that, we can go back and forth on. Fans of Romero, fans of Night of the Living Dead have been going back and forth on for a long time. But Ben was wrong. The choices that Ben made in that film doomed everybody in a number of ways. But even, Season of the Witch, there's no bad guy, good guy dynamic. It's an internal struggle thing that we all deal with in terms of good and evil. The crazies. There's no monster. There's no big time monster. I mean, of course, Romero's always used. There's plenty of monsters in Romero's films. Zombies, first and foremost. You can look at any Romero film, any Romero zombie film. The zombies are not the main evil in the movie. The main evil is the posse in Night of the Living Dead. It's the bike gang in Dawn of the Dead. It's the soldiers in Day of the Dead. The zombies, to me, in Romero's films, and I love the way he treats this, and I think a lot of zombie films post, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and that whole Romero universe, I think it misses the point a lot, where they make the zombies the main evil monster villain, where you blow up a big thing of zombies in the end and it's like, oh, we win, But that's not the case in Romero's films. The zombies are just a force of nature. They're the hurricane or the volcano, and Romero's talked about this before. They're just they're a product of their environment. It's I don't know how to explain it. They're victims of circumstance, let's just say. But they're not the true villains in Romero's films. Same for you look at Martin. I think it's a perfect example of Romero's lack of good and evil. Martin is obviously the main character in the film. John Amplis is character Martin, and of course Tatakuda is the his the antagonist, I guess you could say, to Martin's protagonist. But Martin is definitely not good. Martin is as evil as any character in any of Romero's films, but he's not portrayed as evil. He's not the bad guy. When he, spoiler alert, when he gets his in the end, it's a very somber, unsatisfying feeling. And that's why, and I'll go ahead and spoil it now, I don't have Martin on this list. I don't have John Amplis' performance as Martin on this list. I just can't look at him as the villain of the movie, because he's not. He's the main character. He's kind of the anti-hero of the film. And I think at the end, when Kuda drives the stake into his heart and kills him, it's just like, how do I feel about this? Is this good? Is this bad? Because Kuda himself could be portrayed as the villain in Martin, but he's not coming from he's not coming from an evil place. It's a very righteous place that Kuda's coming from in that film. So it's just a different differing of ideas. And I think that's, like I said, a common thread through all Romero's films. And I think that's why a lot of his endings are a little a little somber, a little, I guess, unfulfilling in a way. Even in Creepshow, I mean, Creepshow is a perfect example of Romero using monsters, but the monsters are not the main villain of the piece. I mean, in every story in Creepshow, the main bad guy in the story is not the monster or whatever they're dealing with at the time. Um, the crate, Fluffy. The monster in the crate is not the main villain in that movie. He's just a force in nature. He, I guess, the main villain in that story would be Billy, Wilma Northrop, Adrian Barbeau's character. Now, but the argument could be made that it could be Hal Holbrook's character as the true villain in that movie because he's the one that uses that force of nature to do bad. So there's really no hero in that. Something to tide you over. Another perfect example of the monsters coming back to get revenge on the actual villain. They're creeping up on you. I mean, it's all throughout Creepshow. I mean, Day of the Dead, self-explanatory. The real villains in that film are definitely not the zombies. Hell, the most likable character in that film is a zombie. And I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, we could dissect this all night long, but we got a countdown to get to. But I mean, you go. Excuse me. You look at Monkey Shines. The monkey's not the villain. It's again another force of nature, victim of circumstance. That monkey didn't choose what happened to him. I mean, Dark Half. I mean, that's pretty much a whole movie about good and evil. The dichotomy between those. Bruiser. I mean, even up through Land of the Dead, and I think it's perfectly personified. Even if the movie itself is not a perfect film, and it is not, I will not. There are a lot of Romero fans out there that will defend this movie, and I'll say it's not as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. But even Survival of the Dead, there's no right and wrong, good and evil in that film. There's two differing tribes of thought in those films. You have the Muldoons who think you should, treat, the zombie thing one way. And then you have the, what's the other, Muldoons and the somethings. I can't remember what they're, what's it? The Muldoons and the Flynns. Just two different trains of thought. They're, you could disagree with one or both. So it's not a right and wrong, good and evil thing. It's literally just, and that's life. There is no perfect human. There is no just pure evil human. I mean, hell, even Hitler loved his dog. I mean, we hear that all the time. It's like, as evil of a human being that could ever exist on this planet still had love in their heart. There was still some good there. Not that, Hitler was good or anything. I'm not saying that before I get fucking canceled or something, but you know what I'm saying. And no Romero film ever played with that dichotomy, the good and evil. He just never did it. Like I said, there was never a Freddy Krueger who was evil, the bad guy, good guy. He never did it, and I kind of always knew that. I mean, Romero's always kind of talked about, the key to his films is that we are the monsters. What are they? They're us. That's all. That's permeated through Romero's films from 1968 all the way until Survival of the Dead in 2010 or whatever that was. And even in fucking the amusement park, the main villain in that movie is just time, old age, death. So I don't know. It's interesting. I think that's one thing that separates Romero as a not only as just a horror filmmaker, but just as a filmmaker in general, is that there is no black and white. Everything is shades of gray in Romero's films. I mean, even in Dawn of the Dead, you have the main four characters, but, Peter even says it himself in the helicopter, we're bad guys. That's exactly what we are. We're thieves, so there is no defined hero in these movies. Abby saying hello for the night. So with that said, I think it's time to get into the top 10. And I it's going to be interesting. It's like I said, when I sat down to do this top 10, this is not how I expected it to come out. But when you bear out the just the overall scores. Like I said, I have 3 different categories that I'm judging these characters on to determine who is the worst of the worst in terms of villains. It's performance by the actors. It's the evil factor. How evil is that character, and in what way are they evil? Because there's different types and different levels of evil. So, and then how satisfying was that character's death in the end? When that character died, you got a stiff one. You were like, yes, that's what I've been waiting for. That's what I want. I don't know if anybody else felt that way about any of these deaths, but if you did, I'm right there with you. All right, so let's get into it. The top 10 Romero villains. And at number 10 here, I'm going to say it, and I'm going to duck because I know there's going to be some tomatoes being thrown, some eggs, perhaps some lettuce. Many different types of food are about to be thrown in my way. But number 10 on my list, top 10 Romero villains, Harry Cooper, Night of the Living Dead. Hear me out. Why is, what makes Harry Cooper evil? Is he evil? That's a question that I, honestly, when I came to the conclusion of whether or not, how evil was Harry Cooper, I had trouble thinking, was he evil at all? Was there evil in him? I don't know. I don't think so. Now, were his methods a little questionable? Yes. But in a situation that he was in that film, to me, he's just a concerned father who is losing his mind on the brink of, his daughter is unconscious downstairs. His wife is a wreck because of the daughter. He's just trying to do what's best for his family. Whether his methods were right, wrong, doesn't matter. I think he was coming from a place of wanting to do what was best for his family, which is totally understandable and totally respectable. So in terms of just evil, yes, there are moments in the film when he grabs the gun or he doesn't open the door for Ben. He thinks about it. It's not like, oh, I want him to die. Never mind. It's more of, to me, I always interpreted it as, Ben's done for. If I open that door, they're all coming in and then they're going after my wife and daughter. It's time to get down in the cellar and call it a day. So I don't know if I consider that evil. Yes, he holds Ben up with the gun in the end. He doesn't shoot. He's just trying to get some control on an uncontrollable situation. And I think every character in that film is trying to get some kind of control in that uncontrollable situation. Like I said, his methods you may not agree with him, but I think he was not coming from a place of hate or evil. It was more of a place of, hey, I got to do what's best for my family first and foremost. He just had his car flipped over, in the film. He's like, oh, they just flipped our car over. He's been through a lot. And of course the guy finds the basement and they've been down in the basement and they were fine. Now the argument can be made that his approach, and I'll say this, and I think I've said it before, Harry Cooper was right, in my opinion. Now you can always throw that wild card, that ticking time bomb into the situation of Karen. Because they don't know, but we know. Well, I guess when you first watch the film, you don't really know, especially back then, because, it was a new concept. But, as the film goes on, we find out that Karen's going to turn. Now, if they all lock themselves down in that basement and Karen turns, that's a whole other thing. That's a whole other film it would be a completely different film and a whole other situation that they'd have to deal with. How would they deal with it? Would Ben try to kill the kid? Would there be a struggle? There's a million different ways that could have gone. But in terms of the situation that they were in at the moment in the film that they were at, Harry Cooper was right. The safest thing to do is to get down in the basement, barricade it up, and just wait it out. Now, yes, grab some supplies from upstairs. Do what you got to do. But the basement was the safest place. And I don't hear this brought up enough either, is that in that film, Ben, his insistence on boarding up the house is just making a lot of noise and attracting a lot of attention. He comes in and what's the first thing he does? Turn on every light in the house. That's going to draw attention. Let's board up the windows, board up the doors. That's noise. It's going to draw attention. It made the situation worse. Everything that Ben did from that to trying to get gas in the vehicle to get to a rescue station turned out to be the wrong decision in the end. Tom and Judy paid the price. um, so as likable of a character as Ben is in that film, as brave and I mean, he's a heroic character. It's just unfortunate that his decisions were the wrong ones. And if they would have just listened to Harry Cooper in the beginning, they, may have all survived, or more of them would have survived than not. Even if Karen, does come back, she may bite one. There's no way to tell. But in the situation that they were in at the time, Harry Cooper was 100% right. And I'll debate you on that. I don't care. The performance of Carl Hardman, I thought Carl Hardman does a great job for a guy that's not a professional actor or whatever. I think he was mostly working behind the scenes a lot of the time. Especially working on commercials. I mean, he of course plays the Calgon, the scientist in the Calgon commercial. So yeah, he'd done some acting before, but for the role he was given, and it's middle of the road. It's not it's not one of the best performances in terms of actor, but I thought he does a really good job. He's very memorable in it, and he does his job because by the end, you do hate him. You do want him to just go away, however that may be. And then of course, satisfying death. I don't know how satisfying it is. Now, at what point do you call his death? He gets shot by Ben, shot in the stomach, falls down the cellar. His last breath, he's reaching for his daughter. I think there's something kind of heartbreaking about that. And when he comes back after getting is eaten by his daughter, when he comes back and Ben just unloads on him pretty much. That could be seen as satisfying in some way, but I couldn't give him too high of a score on the satisfying death, because that in terms of a villain, it's one of the sadder ends to a character who at the very end, right before he goes, he's reaching for his daughter, and it's kind of heartbreaking as a father to a daughter. It is heartbreaking. So maybe that plays a role in it. So if you disagree, let me know. I love to have this conversation because that's the beautiful thing about Night of the Living Dead, is that there is no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's all about how you interpret situation and what's going on. But Romero himself even says, Ben was wrong. Harry was right. So, but I do believe he belongs on this list because he is such an iconic character, and he's an absolute pain in the ass, and mostly made the situation, if not worse, more combustible, more apt for failure in a lot of ways. And even at a point, he tried to suck it up and play along, with the cocktails and stuff like that. So, but he belongs on the list at number 10. Harry Cooper, played by Carl Hardman. All right, Harry Cooper at number 10. At number 9, and this is one I kind of went back and forth on, and I actually want to double check here to make sure I got this right where I wanted it. But at number 9 on my list, I'm going with Billy herself. Just call her Billy. Everybody does. Wilma Northrop from Creepshow. Now, is she evil? She's a bitch. No getting around that. Is she evil? Yes. She. I think there is a lot of evil and darkness to that character. Now, of course, she's just who she is. She's an annoying, emasculating, just bitch. I don't know what else to say. Now, does she murder anybody in the film? No. But I think one of the most telling scenes in that version, or in that story of Creepshow, is when she's just, she's at the garden party, and she's going on and on about that. Which is one of the lines that they changed for some reason. I guess because they didn't want to use the word cunt in the movie, but that or whatever that etiquette crotches is what it says in the film, but she's just going on, and everybody's annoyed with her, and nobody wants her there. And then finally, Henry Hal Holbrook's character, just like Wilbur, down she goes. Everybody just starts clapping. He's just, in the. That's such a great scene. That's just, and it's showing what's in his mind, what he wants to do with this woman who, is his wife, but who just emasculates him, tears him down at any chance she gets. Oh, what would you do without me, Henry? That type of thing. And I think that is a form of evil. That's it's almost manipulative. I don't know. I don't have the specific words to describe, what kind of evil that is, but it is definitely a form of evil. It's abuse. It's I guess we can go with that. It's spousal abuse in a way. It's very mental abuse, and she does beat the shit out of him in the end. Not too bad. She doesn't, haul off and bloody his nose or anything, but there is some, and it also seems like a character that relishes bad, like when he calls her down to the college, and she's like, oh, he beat up another girl, and she's like, oh man, I'm so excited about this. There is some deviancy to that character, and in terms of performance, man, Adrienne Barbeau, I absolutely love Adrienne Barbeau in that role. And of course, at the time, she was more used to playing like the female lead, the female hero character in those films. So it was something kind of different for her, and she plays it so well. It's such a memorable performance by Adrienne Barbeau. Now, satisfying death. How satisfying was her death? Very satisfying. I think it was the perfect, bringing everything together. Henry leads her down there to the crate. Fluffy comes popping out. Now, the only thing I guess there's not in terms of effects, where every other, and that's a common thread too that I saw making this list. There's a lot of the more bigger name actors. I don't know why. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's a contractual thing. I don't know. But in terms of like makeup effects and stuff like that, it's like when it comes to like Joe Pilato or somebody like that, and George is probably they're probably happy to do it for George because they're there having a good time with it as well. It's kind of like the Sam Raimi Bruce Campbell dynamic where Sam Raimi feels 100% comfortable beating the shit out of Bruce Campbell for 90 minutes on film because they're such good friends. And I think that's a lot of it. But when I think he's working with bigger name actors like an Adrienne Barbeau or like a Dennis Hopper later in Land of the Dead, I guess you'd probably have to pay him a little more to, get in the makeup or something like that, which, I don't know that to be the case. I mean, Barbeau did the gunshot, so I don't know. But, not a gory, bloody finale to that, but it is very satisfying in terms of the story that's being told. It's like when that monster comes out, and grabs her, drags her in, and then of course, the great line from Hal Holbrook in the end is like, "Oh, just tell it to call you Billy." Everybody does. So great ending there. But yeah, had to put her on the list because she's one of the most annoying, unlikable characters in any Romero film. Period. Even somebody as likable as Adrienne Barbeau, who I met last year, and it was just the sweetest, nicest woman you could imagine. Of course, she was there signing autographs all weekend long, all day long. I mean, she was a very popular table to visit. So yeah, there you go. Wilma Northrop, Billy at number 9. Coming in at number 8. This is a good one. Went with Blades. Dawn of the Dead, Tom Savini's character with the biker gang. Now, there's an argument to be made. Maybe he should be higher. I was kind of thinking he probably would be a little higher on this list, really. But in comparison to the rest of the list, there is something to be said for Tom Savini's character. That it now, of course, you can use your imagination, and it is kind of implied that they probably had to rape and pillage to survive on the road and show no mercy. I mean, that's probably why and it makes a lot of sense in a situation like that when the world is completely falling apart. Who would thrive in that situation but a bunch of uncontrollable psychopaths, basically? Um, no emotion, no fear, really. Um, and he was one of those characters. Now, Does he kill any human beings? I'm sure he had in the past, but by the time we see him in the film, I don't think he kills. He definitely tries, but I think that's also, if you think back on that film, a lot of that is, you can interpret that as self-defense. I mean, they started shooting first. Flyboy started it. They were just there to, uh, you know, uh, steal and have fun, throw pies in zombies' faces. Um, so that they weren't there with the intention of looking to kill anybody. But that's kind of where they had to go because Steven started shooting first. That's a T-shirt, a Star Wars knockoff. Steven shot first. Uh, maybe one day I'll make that. Um, it does. It's not really implied that he's a mass murderer, but I guess in a situation like that, you probably have to be. So it's a 50-50 thing on that. I mean, and what kind of evil is Blades in that film? I mean, he's just a fucking nut job having a good time. Now, I think the thing that really kind of raises his level in terms of, how evil of a character he was in those films is the gleefulness that he kills the zombies with. There's no emotion. There's no, like in the basement scene at the beginning of Dawn of the Dead, when Peter and Roger are killing the zombies that have been stored there. Peter's tearing up. I mean, he understands that these were people. These were father's sons. I mean, it's a sad thing to happen. He understands that. Didn't seem like Blades gave a shit. Didn't seem like any of them gave a shit. I mean, he was chopping off heads. I mean, it was all just fun to him. I mean, there's something to be said too, but the fact that, I mean, you can kill a zombie by shooting it in the head, but here's a guy that chose to just go straight on. I'm going to use knives, and I'm going to use machetes, and I'm going to use swords. He he kind of got his kicks off. Got his kicks. Is that a thing? Got his rocks off, got his kicks. One of those. By killing the zombies in brutal, nasty ways. Something that, our main characters obviously killed plenty of zombies, but it's more about of a self-defense thing. It's more of a necessity to survive. They were just that it was a game to them at that point. I mean, they're robbing, robbing the zombies and just toying with them and killing them in these horrible, brutal ways. So, I mean, to me, that's evil on some level, even if they are the zombies, which goes back to the point where the zombies in Romero's films are not the true villains. They're not yes, they're the monsters, but they're not the villains. And, that's, like I said, kind of how it is through all of Romero's films. So this is a perfect example of that, where, the monsters are the victims to the real villains in the film, which, Savini and Tasso and, the Bike Gang, Tony Booba, just a great crew. So yeah. And in terms of performance, I mean, Savini, this was probably his second performance in a film, and I thought he did a perfectly fine job. It's not anything Oscar worthy. I mean, but I guess in a situation like that, you don't have to be. And it was such a popular character, so well done. I mean, I guess it's also due to Savini's success post Dawn of the Dead that they brought him back for Land of the Dead as the Blades zombie. So that was pretty cool. So, I mean, that's a pretty iconic villain when you bring him back as a zombie, and he's just as, killing people with that fucking machete even then. So, yeah, a good performance. I gave it right there in the middle. It's a 5, maybe a 6, depending on how you look at it. And of course, he did all the stunt work, and of course, the going to the satisfying death part. I think that's a little higher. It's a little above average. I like, the shot, but the thing is, when all the other biker members around him. Now, I guess it goes back to Savini was doing the effects on this film, so I don't know how hard it would have been for him to do effects on himself. So I guess that's why he died the way he did, getting shot, falling off the balcony, into the water, which is a great stunt. I can't say enough about Tom's stunt work in all of the Romero films that he did. But it just wasn't that, all the other bikers around him were just getting torn apart. There's a lot of gore, a lot of blood, a lot of creative, ways to die. We didn't get that with Tom, unfortunately. So yeah, it is a cool stunt and a cool way to kill off that character. It is a satisfying death. I will say that. Seeing it here recently in theaters for the 3D version, when he gets his, there are people that are like, yeah, they got into it. So, got to give him props on that. But in terms of just, in terms of the gore factor, I guess, of the death, I gotta score that low. But yeah, I got Blades at number 8 on this list. So we got Harry Cooper number 10, Wilma Northrop, just call her Billy, at number 9, and then Blades at number 8. And number 7 here, this is an interesting one. This is a performance that I don't think gets talked about enough. Words are hard, folks. And it's of course it's one of Romero's lesser seen films. And of course I'm talking Bruiser. I had it handy here. Been working with it this week. Kind of going back watching some of his performance, but I gotta go number 7 here. Milo Stiles from Bruiser, played by the great Peter Stormare, who of course was in Fargo. What was his character's name? He's the one putting Steve Buscemi in the wood chipper. I can't remember his name now, but just a great all-around actor. And man, in this film, you want to talk about chewing scenery. A lot of people, I've heard people say, it gets kind of over the top. It's kind of silly. And it is in ways, but in terms of a memorable character and just an asshole that you can't, he's just a slimy, sleazy piece of shit of a human being. It's Milo Stiles in Bruiser. And I think Bruiser is one of Romero's most underrated films, in my opinion. And like I said, it's just so underseen. There's one release. I mean, it came out on VHS, of course. This DVD release from Lionsgate is really the only DVD or Blu-ray. There's no Blu-ray release in the United States as of yet, let alone a 4K. I'd love to see somebody do it. I mean, God, you'd think somebody out there would be willing, which I guess the rights are probably owned by Lionsgate, I'm guessing. And I've heard in the past that Lionsgate's kind of hard to work with for a lot of these boutique labels. But I mean, it's a Romero film. It's going to sell, especially with, if it's a Vinegar Syndrome or Second Sight, even. If we could get a Second Sight over in the UK of Bruiser, that would be amazing. I also think that that's a film that would look really good in 4K, but I digress. That's beside the point. There is a German Blu-ray available, I believe. I don't have it. It's one I've been looking for, but I hear it looks pretty good. But anyway, let's get back to the character, Peter Stormare's Milo Stiles. I can go on about performance. To me, that performance is a 10. I love him in that film. Just the way great actors do this, and I do believe Peter Stormare is a very good actor. Great actors do this. They take the words and what's on the page and bring it to life in a way that nobody else could. Now, he totally does that in this movie. I sound like goddamn Linda in Halloween. He totally does it. Sorry. But yeah, it's very Pacino-esque. There's a lot of Al Pacino in this performance to me, and I love the scene where Tom Atkins is of course plays the detective, as Tom Atkins plays in pretty much every film that he's ever been in. Tom Atkins is asking him about the girl that just got thrown out the window by Henry Creedlow, and he's just like, I don't know, man. And he's like, well, were there any witnesses or anything? He's like, Of course, we always have a crowd. We cheerleaders, Cracker Jacks. It's the sarcasm comes through in that man. I love that performance. I could go on and on about it. And it's a performance that I think just I don't think a lot of people have seen. I think people that haven't seen Bruiser are going to be very blown away by his performance in that film. And in terms of the character itself, the Milo Styles character, what is there to say about this guy? I mean, he's out there. I mean, he's coked out of his mind. He's got money. He's got power. He's a womanizer to the 10th degree. Um, he is literally so in the film Bruiser. If you haven't seen Bruiser yet, in the film Bruiser, Henry Creedlow, the character played by Jason Fleming, is kind of a guy that's trying to work his way up in the corporate world, but he's just timid. And I can identify with a lot of this. He's just timid. He doesn't want to step on anybody's toes. He tries to take chances, but it just backfires in his face always. He's trying to do everything he can to survive in this corporate world. He works for a magazine called Bruiser, which I guess is kind of like a Maxim type magazine where they, there's always a cover girl and stuff like that. And of course, Milo Styles is his character is just disgusting in so many ways in terms of just being, just sexist and misogynist and of course this character played by Peter Romero. This character is really the bane of Henry Creedlow's existence. Everything that is wrong with Henry's life stems from this character. And he's Henry's boss because he runs the whole thing. I think he owns the magazine or something like that. So in terms of professional life, I mean, he's just, holding Henry down. He doesn't listen to him. He doesn't take him seriously at all. Nobody in Henry's life takes him seriously. His accountant is fucking him over out of money. His wife is having an affair with Milo behind Henry's back. And not even behind his goddamn back, just right out in front. Like no remorse whatsoever from either character. I mean, I guess I could have put her on this this list as well because she's a very unlikable character in that film. But yeah, I mean, it's so everything bad that's weighing Henry Creedlow's life down is stemming from this character Milo, and the girl that he really loves is actually married to Milo, and she can't stand Milo either. She wants out, but there are complications because she can't get out because it would fuck everything up. I mean, she also works for the magazine. There's a whole dynamic there, but everything goes back to Milo. And by the end of the film, and I guess when we come down to just how satisfying of a death did Milo get, it's debatable, in my opinion. I didn't like the way he met his maker in Bruiser, to be honest. So if you haven't seen Bruiser, spoiler alert. I guess I gotta keep doing this for. I guess if you're watching this though, I'm sure you've seen these fucking movies. I mean, goddamn. So I'm not gonna keep saying spoiler, but of course, in the end of Bruiser, Henry, gets him on this lift and he's lifting him up in the middle of this big party where the Misfits are playing, which is fucking awesome to begin with. But they're having this big party that Milo is throwing, costume party, and Milo's up there, and of course he's got the devil horn. He's playing Satan, which is a very telling thing about this film. So that he's got him lifted up on this I don't know, it's like a wire harness or something that they'd used earlier for a pinata or something. That's why this ending is a little meh to me. And of course, to destroy the pinata, they use like a laser gun from some. I don't fucking know. This sounds so stupid. It makes more sense, I guess, if you watch it. But anyway, Henry basically uses this laser gun to shoot Milo in the dick and fry his wiener, and then lasers him right in the head and kills him in front of everybody, which is kind of a cool visual where Milo is just hanging over this huge party. Misfits are playing, everybody's having a good time, everybody's dressed up, and so it is another great line I love from this when he's banging some chick in a urinal at the party, and he comes out, and of course it's loud, and the urinal's rocking, and Henry's just kind of hanging out there, just waiting for him to come out, and he comes out, and he's like staggering out with his pants undone, and I forget what he says, but his line is like, "What do you think I'm doing? Isn't that taking the shit of a lifetime?" I don't know. That always tickles me every time that line comes up. So yeah, in terms of the satisfying death, it's not one of my favorites. It's probably one of my least favorite of all the deaths in this list. There's just something about it. There's not a lot of. Again, it could come down to does the actor charge more to get torn apart? Who knows? And of course, Bruiser's independent. I think they made that for very, very little money. I want to say it was just a few million, if that. And that's that's just a guess. I honestly don't know for sure. So yeah, but yeah, I got him at number 7 because it's just a great character. It's a character with no likable qualities whatsoever. So I had to put him on here. I love that character. So number 7, Milo Styles from Bruiser. All right, what do we got here at number 6? This is a good one. This one is one I thought might have been a little higher. But at number 6 on this list, I had to go with E.G. Marshall as Upson Pratt from Creepshow. From the story, They're Creeping Up on You. Completely unlikable character. Racist. Mean. Cold-hearted. What are other words you can describe? At one point in this film, and now, does he kill anybody in this film? Depends on how you look at it. His cruelty towards his employees, I guess, ended up, leading to the guy that he fired killing himself. And his wife, of course, calls him and is, cussed him out, telling him what a horrible guy he is, and he could just care less, not affected by it whatsoever. Now that's a level of evil. That's a level of just a level of evil meanness, I guess. I don't know what the word I'm looking for on that is, but it is a level of evil to just have no emotion, no remorse for your actions. It's all about money with him. He looks down on pretty much everybody around him. He's sealed off in this hermetically sealed, apartment. Now, is he the monster in the film? No, the cockroaches are the true monsters of the film. But they just, they get the better of him in the end. So yeah, but just the way he's played by E.G. Marshall, it's such a comic book, over the top, bad guy, just bad character. So now, in terms of satisfying death, I got that's high on the score. That's the final death in the entire movie. I love, now looking at it now, to be honest, the you can kind of see the dummy, the effect. It's not as good as some of the other effects in Creepshow from Savini. You can kind of tell it's a fake body, but it's still gross enough that when people who haven't seen that film see those cockroaches start coming out of his neck and out of his mouth, and they're just swarming him. It does make your skin crawl, and it's such an over the top way for him to die that the cockroaches just all, the lights came back on, and of course they're in this hermetically sealed room where there's nowhere else to go. So they all just hide inside of him until eventually they come pouring out of his body. His entire body is taken over by cockroaches. It's insane. It's such an iconic death in all of Romero films. That's a 10. I think I have that marked as a 10. Like I said, this is a very technical list here. Yeah, that's got that as a 10. Performance, I put it as an 8. E.G. Marshall does a great job. Another great actor that, now that's an interesting one because, did they have to pay him extra to get all the cockroaches to, to dump all those cockroaches and shit all over him. I don't know. That's interesting. But yeah, great performance by E.G. Marshall. And like I said, evil. Yeah, there is evil there. There's a coldness to him, but he's not a murderer. He's not a mass murderer. He's not a tyrant, really. I mean, well, yeah. In his world and his business or whatever he controls, he is obviously a tyrant. So I guess that's where the most of his evil comes from, is just being a huge dick and not caring one way or the other about his employees. And like I said, racist to boot. So yeah, not a good guy, not a good person. Excellent villain with a all-time death. So I got Upson Pratt at number 6. So now we're creeping in, like what I did there, creeping into the top 5. Let me take a drink here before we get into this one, because this one was interesting. I thought this would be lower on the list, but really, when you think about it, Wooly from Dawn of the Dead, smaller role, not as big of a role as some of the guys on here, like Milo Stiles, Upson Pratt, Harry Cooper, of course. Smaller role, but without a doubt, an evil human being. I mentioned Upson Pratt being a racist. You can't get much more racist than than what Wooly does in this film. He uses the the zombie epidemic as an excuse to kill people he doesn't like or agree with. His prejudices come into play. He's using his position of authority as a SWAT team police officer member. And of course, he's lost his goddamn mind too, like most everybody else has in this film at this point. At this point of the actual zombie epidemic. But the way he lashes out and uses that, he uses it as an excuse to go in guns a-blazing, killing anybody and everybody, for no other reason than his own prejudices and bias and racial disagreements. And of course, you set that up in the very first scene where you see him, and first line he says is, I'm not gonna say it because I'm probably get kicked off here, but it's jarring, especially today. Could you imagine trying to do that now? But there's no likable qualities about this character. Goddamn, when you barge into a room with a shotgun and literally blast someone's head into 1,000 pieces, and your response is to laugh and hoot and holler, as my papa used to say, hoot and holler, like you're having a party, you're killing people, and it's the Tom Savini as Blades taken to the next level, in my opinion. It's a lot of the same thing. In terms of performance, Jim Baffico, and we were talking about Jim Baffico last weekend. I did the live commentary on deadpit.com on their Facebook page for Hell of a Living Dead. We were talking about Jim Baffico, and I believe it was the Creepy Kentuckian was saying he thought he had passed on, but I didn't think so. But I looked it up to be sure. No, he's still around. And actually, the funny thing and interesting thing about Jim Baffico, he doesn't do a lot of conventions. He does sell autographs. I know CK said that he sent I forget what he sent, maybe just an 8x10 or something like that to Jim Baffico years ago to get it signed. I believe he did get it signed, if I remember correctly. But he doesn't do a lot of conventions, but he is an award-winning, I believe he won an Emmy for directing soap operas. I remember hearing he was doing something. I knew he was still in acting. He was still in, the arts in some way. I I knew he was doing something, but I didn't know that he was directing soap operas, winning awards, and it was actually a very uh, um, the entertainment and acting world. I believe he has a book out, a book or maybe a couple of books out on acting. I remember hearing that on the WGON radio podcast a few years back. I'd love to track that down and just kind of take a look at it and see what it is. But no, he's still around, and I think his performance is fantastic. It's a small performance, but I think it's one of the most impactful performances in this because I mean, dude went full bore. I mean, he embraced it. Just the wild, frantic, angry, um, just what that character was. I mean, it's one of those characters that I think is perfectly cast because and he kind of carries over into Knight Riders after Dawn of the Dead because he comes back and plays a character who's very unlikable. He plays the dad of Patricia Tallman. I guess we can move on to Satisfying Death for Wooly. Um, Fairly satisfying. Gets his in the end. It's the way we're introduced to Peter, the main protagonist in Dawn of the Dead. Just gets shot, taken down. Of course, tried to be wrestled down without actually being killed by Roger, but Peter takes him out. So it's not the most thrilling or gory ways to go. But I think in terms of how it introduces us to our main hero character in Dawn of the Dead, and a perfect example of the main hero in Dawn of the Dead doing something evil. I mean, yes, Wooly was a psychotic, murdering bastard, but he was still human at the time, and Peter killed him. So, and people lose sight of that a lot, and in zombie movies now, it's like, well, if we can kill zombies, we can just kill everybody else, and it's fine. It's all fair game. And it's like there was always a level there that Romero had in those films. There was always a line. Killing a zombie and killing a human are two completely different things. Now Romero always did a good job of keeping that reality to it. So yeah, I had to put Wooly at 6. I just think he's a just one of the most, or no, I had Wooly at 5. I'm sorry. One of the most unlikable characters in any Romero film. There's no redeeming qualities about that man whatsoever. But I hear the actor Jim Baffico is a really, really nice, really cool guy. So I don't want anybody walking away thinking he's as big of an asshole as he is in the film. So here we go. Number 4. This is one I just rewatched not long ago, just to kind of refresh myself to see where he fits, because he's a great character and really personification of evil in a lot of ways. And of course, that's George Stark from The Dark Half. Now, I've mentioned before, The Dark Half's not my favorite Romero film, but I do appreciate it a little more after watching it again the other night. I like it more as a good Stephen King film than I do as a good Romero film. I see way more Stephen King in this than I do Romero, if that makes any sense. But of course, it's that Jekyll and Hyde thing. Of course, Thad Beaumont is the main character, played by Timothy Hutton. But of course, his evil alter ego, George Stark, who is writing these horrible, successful but horrible and nasty novels, is Thad Beaumont's alter ego. I forget what they call that. It's like a ghost name or something like that. I can't remember, but of course, this character is manifested into reality and is tormenting and killing everybody around Thad Beaumont. Just killing, anybody that is connected to Thad in any way possible. I mean, George Stark is killing him. And of course, the performance. Timothy Hutton was nominated for an Academy Award for, what was that movie called? It was just a few years before The Dark Half came out. So, I mean, this is a very accomplished and, very good actor in Timothy Hutton. But I will say, I enjoyed his performance in this more as George Stark than I did his performance as Thad Beaumont, because I feel like Thad Beaumont's just a little bit too much of a pussy in this movie. There's just a little too much goody two shoes, and I understand you're trying to differentiate the characters of Thad Beaumont and George Stark. Um, but I feel like I appreciated his performance as George Stark. Now, George Stark character, in terms of how he's portrayed, he's like a Southerner from Mississippi. He's kind of he has this cool look, hair slicked back, kind of a an Elvis thing going on. I guess that's kind of where they get him, him being from Mississippi, and of course in the film they're always playing "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" That's a constant feature in that film. But I really liked his performance in that. There's a scene where Thad's trying to, I guess, summon him, and he's writing on this piece of paper, and he's communicating with George Stark, who's located somewhere else. And cuts to George Stark, and he's got the hole in his hand from. I'm assuming that you people have seen The Dark Half at this point. But there's a scene where he stabs himself in the hand, so Thad stabs himself in the hand, that type of thing. And he's just sitting there, and he's got his hand, he's got a bottle whiskey, his legs up. He uses his leg to kick the bottle into his hand, so he pours it on his hand. Be a man, be a man. He says, great stuff. I mean, it's really, really. I mentioned Peter Stormare chewing the scenery as Milo Stiles and Bruiser earlier. Timothy Hutton does a great job chewing the scenery in The Dark Half. The one negative, though, I got to give, and this is a personal pet peeve of mine, being from the South. The Southern accent's not that great, and if you notice as the film goes on, I noticed this as the movie went on towards the climax, is that the Southern accent got a little less and less as the movie went on. Now there could be a philosophical reason for that. Maybe he thought, as the movie went on, George Stark became more and more of Thad Beaumont. Maybe that accent goes away. I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking too much about it. But to me, I can't stand anything in movies more than bad Southern accents. And 99.9% of all Southern accents in movies that are, you get some British guy or something like that trying to do a Southern accent, or it drives me nuts. It takes me completely out of the film. Sling Blade is a perfect example. That's what people in the South sound like. That's what people in the South talk about, especially from that region. And in Mississippi, I've lived in Mississippi. I lived in Mississippi for 2 years. People don't, that's not how people talk in the South. I mean, yes, there's a drawl and this and that, but it's a little over the top, and you can kind of tell. So I got to take points off for that. But I think other than that, his performance as George Stark is fantastic. Evil factor, I mean, the evil meter for George Stark has got to be really, really high. I think I had him, he's a 10 on my list, because he is literally the personification of evil. He is the dark, evil half of Thad Beaumont's personality manifested into, a living being. Cold-hearted, kills with no remorse, no hesitation. Sometimes kills. I mean, for God's sakes, the first person he kills in the movie is an old man, and he beats him to death with his own leg. An old war veteran with one leg. He takes his fake leg and beats him to death with it. That's pretty out there. It's pretty fucked up. And of course, it goes on throughout the whole movie, just one after another. He uses a straight edge razor a lot in the film. So, in terms of just being the absolute pure personification of evil, he may be the most evil character in all of Romero's films. Just because he's a mass murderer, he's really the closest. Yeah, to me, it's the closest that Romero ever came to making a slasher film. Is The Dark Half. I can't think of another one that plays more like a normal stalk and slash type of movie, especially the scene in the hallway where the guy with the ponytail gets his ponytail cut, and it's great lighting and whatnot. So to me, The Dark Half is the closest that Romero ever got to being just a straight ahead slasher. But even then, I mean, it's you're still playing with that Jekyll and Hyde. Like Thad Beaumont is just as guilty as George Stark, just for the simple fact that George Stark is a piece of Thad Beaumont's mind. It's literally a piece of the main character. It's the evil dark half of our main hero character. So, I had to put him at number 4. So anybody has any objections to this, let me know down in the comments. Like I said, hell, come on. Like I said, I'm going to be doing live streams, trying to do one every Sunday night. So clear Sunday night and hop on with me, and we'll talk about it. So the top 3. And this one I made on the Dead Pit Discord page. I did a little promotion that I was going to be doing this tonight. And I put the main image, the one here behind me, posted the main image up, and Uncle Bill, who was the co-host with Creepy Kentuckian from the Dead Pit YouTube show, a radio show, whatever you want to call it, commented and said, just seeing Dennis Hopper character from Land of the Dead on this pisses me off already. Well, I don't think this is going to make it any better, but I got Dennis Hopper at number 3 from Land of the Dead, Kaufman. Now, I know UB's not the biggest fan of Land of the Dead. I like Land of the Dead quite a bit. The more I've watched it over time, I think it ages really well. I think a lot of the performances are better than people give them credit for, and I think a lot of the ideas that Romero was playing with in Land of the Dead are really ahead of their time, especially, you look now. But Kaufman's character, or the character of Kaufman played by Dennis Hopper in this, and of course, any interviewer or commentary that Romero talks about working with Dennis Hopper in this film, he told Hopper to play Kaufman like, the George W. Bush administration was in charge at the time, to play it like, what was his name? Not, the Attorney General at the time, or something like that. I can't remember. It was just around the tip of my tongue. Play it like Rumsfeld, Donald Rumsfeld. And so that's what Dennis Hopper does. And I love Dennis Hopper's performance as Kaufman in this. It's a more subtle Dennis Hopper. It's not as over the top as like Blue Velvet, or even some of the like sillier stuff that he did, like Super Mario Brothers or something. But it's a fun performance with some great lines and some great deliveries too. One of my favorites, of course, is stand there, zombies, man, creep me out, while he's picking at his nose and shit. Just a fun performance from Dennis Hopper there. Now, in terms of evil, he's as big of a tyrant as it gets in the Romero film. He runs everything. He is a mass murderer to boot. As they explain throughout the movie, Cholo, played by John Leguizamo, is doing a lot of Dennis Hopper's dirty work, taking out the trash, as they call it, which looks to me like he's having people killed, because there's somewhat of an uprising happening on the streets. If you haven't seen Land of the Dead, I guess I can explain it to you a little bit. Kaufman is the head of this walled-off city where the survivors are living now. He and the well-to-do are living in a giant high-rise called Fiddler's Green, while everybody else who doesn't have the means or the influence or the power to live in the green are on the streets. They're living, so there's like this uprising where everybody should be able to share the tower. It shouldn't just be for the powerful and then the rich. It should be for everyone, because that's where all the best things are. Every people that are living in the Fiddler's Green Tower are pretty much back to living a normal life. They're shopping, they have apartments, and there's this and that, and they're just completely tuning out the dead world around them, the land of the dead around them, I guess. While everybody on the streets are still dealing with it in some way. It's not the best. So I'm guessing he's having, I guess it's implied that he's having a lot of these members of the resistance killed one by one. I think Ozzy Argento's character in the film is one of them that he kind of kidnaps and forces into prostitution. So he's not a good guy. He's a money-hungry, evil, greedy son of a bitch. Best way to put it. He's the Mr. McMahon of the Romero universe. And another great example of this is when they think that the Green's going to be blasted by the Dead Reckoning that Cholo has taken over. He's bagged up all this money, which belongs to a lot of his board members and people in the Green. He's got it all, and he's taking it with him. He's robbing the bank, and he's heading out. And one of his board members, I guess his like right hand man or whatever, catches him coming out of the elevator, and he's like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "Oh, I was looking for you." He's like, "Oh, what's in the bags?" And he's like, "Oh my God, watch out!" And the guy turns around, and Kaufman just pulls out a gun and just shoots him in the fucking head. He's just like hours, and then of course he gets the call that the Dead Reckoning's been, captured and there's no danger, and he's just like, I just did something that I otherwise wouldn't have done. It's such a great scene. Got a huge laugh in theaters. That's one of the things I remember about the theater experience, seeing Land of the Dead when it came out. So just a cold-blooded, don't give no fucks kind of guy. Just he had no friends. He was, which I guess is how you, like I said, with Blades and those types of characters in Romero's films. That's how you survive the situation. You have no remorse, no heart, no love, no shits given. So yeah, talk about performance. Now this death factor, satisfying death. How satisfying did I think his death was? I guess it's right there in the middle. I guess, yeah, I'd say like 5 or 6. Yeah, it's satisfying, and then the fact that he gets the shit blown out of him, and we see all the money on fire, coming down. But again, it's one of those situations where it would have been really, just think about this. How fucking cool would it have been at the one time that Eugene Clark's character, Big Daddy, tore apart or ate, period. We don't see him eat. He's not interested in eating. He's more fascinated by the tower, I guess. The one time we see him just tear a motherfucker apart would be Kaufman. That would have been, but instead, he gets blown up, and which is fine. It's satisfying to a degree, I guess. But it could have been so much better. And I wonder if it's a thing where if they had done like a real prosthetic, gory death on Dennis Hopper, how fucking cool would that have been? A Romero film where Dennis Hopper gets the Joe Pilato treatment, torn right to fucking half or something. That would have been so much cooler. But I wonder if it's just a situation where, as an actor of his stature, would that cost X amount of dollars more? Which, yeah, George had more of a budget for Land of the Dead, but it's still a really low budget film. And kudos to George in that film, because, man, he made that film look way bigger. I mean, the Dawn of the Dead remake, I think, had twice the budget of Land of the Dead, and Land of the Dead looks bigger than that Dawn of the Dead remake did. There's more of a scope. There's just more going on. There's a lot, and Romero does such a good job of getting every dollar on the screen, which is, it's something you hear about great filmmakers, is that, no dollar wasted, everything goes on the screen. So big kudos on that. But so yeah, I don't know if it was just a situation where Dennis Hopper was like, if you want me to, crawl down in a hole and have you tear me apart, it's probably going to cost you another $500,000 or whatever. I don't know. And they were just like, well, we'll just blow you up, I guess. So, but yeah, I love that character. I love Dennis Hopper is one of my all-time favorite actors, period. I just, even like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, again, just chewing up scenery, playing it for what it is, still so good in that. So yeah, I had to put Kaufman at number 3 on my list. Just a great villain, just a great bad guy. All right, we're down to the final 2 here. Who's number 1? I've mentioned him quite a few times tonight, but I haven't mentioned this guy yet. And number 2, I got Leslie Nielsen as Richard Vickers from Creepshow. Something to Tide You Over. Now, this is something that I would love to debate. Upson Pratt, Richard Vickers. Who is the more evil villain in Creepshow, of all the Creepshow stories? And to me, and again, this is one that, like I said earlier, I expected him to be a little lower on my list. But when you really think about it and you really break it down, what a villain. What a evil son of a bitch. And I love Leslie Nielsen. I grew up on the Naked Gun movies and that whole slew of just, you know, wrongfully accused and Spy Hard and all those. I grew up on those. I grew up a huge Leslie. I'm still a huge Leslie Nielsen fan. One of the funniest actors I ever. So the fact that you could take that character, of course, I know before this he was a somewhat serious actor for many years. But for me in my generation, when you first see Leslie Nielsen in Creepshow, you're like, this is kind of weird. We were used to Lieutenant Frank Drebin, the comedy aspect of it. But man, what a vicious character. The way that he, of course, in Creepshow, if again, if you haven't seen Creepshow, why are you watching this? But of course, in Creepshow, his wife is having an affair with the guy that she's in love with. So he kidnaps his wife, buries her up to her head by the beach, and lets the tide roll in. And he does the same thing to the lover, played by Ted Danson. And like I said, the cold-hearted gleefulness that he has when doing this. And this is something, of course, this is a way to kill a motherfucker that you've been thinking about for a long time. This is something you've been planning. And actually in the film, if you watch it, after he, buries them and the tide rolls in and he thinks they're dead, he goes back to, or he thinks they're dying. He goes back to his house and watches it live on the screen and just is maniacally laughing. And having just the greatest time watching these two people being tortured to death, pretty much waterboarded to death in the absolute worst possible way that you could waterboard somebody. Eventually to the point where they're pretty much buried alive. What a horrible way to be buried alive. Being buried alive is one of the absolute worst ways to die in general. But he somehow is such a fucked up maniacal person that he figured out a way to bury a motherfucker alive while also drowning them. How insane do you have to be? And interesting thing about this too is that if you pay close attention, at one point he goes into this drawer and pulled there. You just see this whole collection of VHS tapes, and to me that implies that this is not the first time he's done this. This is something that he has done many times, over and over again. Not just doing it, but filming it for his own personal collection, so he can go back, have a glass of wine one night. Oh, which one do I want to watch? I'm going to pull this one out, and just watching someone die. There's something, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, about that. The scene that still to this day I don't like watching in that movie, where they're watching the VHS recording of their home invasion scene. If you've seen Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, you know what I'm talking about. There's something in that vein there to me. About Leslie Nielsen's character in this, where he enjoys it. Of course, he's rich. He owns the whole beach area, so he's more than capable of doing this to God knows who. And there's no evidence. There's no body to be found. Everything gets washed away, and that's the sick, twisted, thing about it. In the performance, I think his performance is fantastic, especially near the end. I think that's some of the best acting in all of Creepshow, is at the end of the film when they come back from the dead and come to get him, and his just maniacal laughter and just his fear does such a great job. Leslie Nielsen's such a great actor. God, it's unfortunate. I know he was an older man when he died, but man, I don't even know if you could do a Naked Gun movie these days, to be honest with you. Oh my god. Especially part 3 with the with the scene where Anna Nicole Smith pulls out her dick. Oh, you could not do that today. You could not do that today. Man, well, what a great actor, and what a career he had. And I just love him in this. And like I said, his character is so evil. What did I give him on that? I think I gave him a 9 on that, just because it's a bloodless way to kill somebody, I guess. So it could have been worse. But I mean, this is a mass serial killer who took nothing but joy and pleasure in watching other people suffer and die. It's pretty rough. It's pretty. So I mean, that to me, that puts my head up Upson Pratt. Upson Pratt maybe more of a unlikable dick than old Richard Vickers was in this, but I don't know. You can't get much more evil than that. Now, satisfying death, I do. I do think that that's one of the most satisfying deaths in any Romero film. He finally gets the way that he's been killing others. Just the fear of the zombies coming back, doing to him what he's been doing to others. They bury him up to his neck, and of course he's trying to. I don't. He's such a crazy psychotic killer that he's almost convinced himself that I can get out of this. Like this is my bag, man. This is what I do. But as soon as that cold water hits him, it dawns on him. Oh shit, it's on. What a great shot to I can hold my breath a long time. Such a great way to end that story. So to me, that's one of the all-time number 2 all-time best villains in any Romero film. Just because great actor, great character, psychopath to the 10th degree. Is it the 10th degree? I don't know that phrase, but love it. And of course, I love Leslie Nielsen in general. So maybe that plays a little bit into it. But so to go down the top 10 here real quick before we hit the big number 1, the big asshole of assholes, the bottom of the barrel, the scum of the earth. Who is it? I think you might know who it is if you've made it this far. But at number 10, we had Harry Cooper, Night of the Living Dead. Number 9, Just Call Her Billy, Wilma Northrop from Creepshow. Number 8, Blades, Dawn of the Dead. Number 7, Milo Stiles from Bruiser. Number 6, Upson Pratt from Creepshow. Number 5, Wooly from Dawn of the Dead. Number 4, George Stark from The Dark Half. Number 3, Kaufman from Land of the Dead. And of course, at number 2, Richard Vickers, played by the great Leslie Nielsen from Creepshow. So that brings us to number 1, the worst of the worst. And I think we all know where I'm going with this one. Captain Rhodes, Day of the Dead. I don't think I have to say anything other. I don't think I have to say anything other than that. The most if not the most over-the-top, unlikable characters in any Romero film ever. And Joe Pilato's performance is iconic. Quotable line after quotable line. Of course, he's got the Napoleon complex thing where he pretty much checks all the boxes. He's a murderer, killed Logan in cold blood, then killed Fisher in straight ahead cold blood, just gun to the head, execution style. Tries to kill, Billy and Sarah, throwing them in the zombie pen. So yeah, I mean, he's a killer, tyrant, absolutely. He's in charge. He's in charge of the military now at this point. Everybody's pretty much lost their mind, so he's pretty much the what's the term that Cornette uses on his podcast? The inmates running the asylum. Well, he's the head the head inmate running the asylum at that point. There's nothing likable about that character. Like I said, performance scores high for me. Joe Pilato, I think that's an iconic performance in any horror film ever. You can say that about a lot of characters in Day of the Dead. Going back to the last top 10 I did, top 10 Romero zombies, of course, my number one was Bub from Day of the Dead. There's, like I said, there's an argument to be made that Day of the Dead is Romero's best zombie film, and I know that Zombie Grease uh, has mentioned it before. I hear it more and more as time goes on. I personally don't agree. I love Day of the Dead. I think it's a fantastic. I think it may be Romero's best made film, from a technical standpoint, from an acting standpoint, from a lot of different standpoints. But for me, there's just something so special and unique about Dawn of the Dead that it can't compete. Can't compete for me. But again, here we go. Second top 10 in a row. The top spot is taken over by Day of the Dead. Now, of course, if you can score an 11 on Satisfying Death, this is it. It's the most satisfying death in any Romero film, and hardly any other film can top it. I mean, it is absolutely everything you wanted to happen to this character happen. He's shot, chased by Bub, to the point where he is engulfed in zombies, and then they just tear him in half. Literally tear him in half. Legs dragging down the floor. There's a chicken falling out of his stomach somehow. And of course, his last word. I mean, of course, he has to get the last word in because, choke on him. I mean, that's his mentality. I mean, and he held it even torn in half. He still got to get the last word in. But man, you can't. There's not a more satisfying, visually just enjoyable death in any Romero film and many other horror films in general. So that, I mean, if you can put an 11 on that scale, that's definitely 11 for me. And like I said, level of evil, it's probably at a 9. If he would have just started just shooting everybody and just losing his goddamn mind and just, he probably could have pushed a little farther, but totally willing to kill Sarah at the beginning of the movie. Like I said, kills Dr. Fisher, kills Dr. Logan in cold blood, tries to kill Sarah and Billy again with the zombie corral. Probably would have had Steele, which is an interesting name. I should probably bring up. We're running about an hour and a half now, so I think it's about time to start winding this down. I knew this was going to go long because like I said, I've been putting a lot of thought into this, and I think it's a really interesting topic for Romero fans like me. But what the hell was I going to say? Oh yeah, I think he would have had Steele beat John to death. So I mean, he's murderer, tyrant, all around asshole, bottom of the barrel, worst of the worst. To me, it's just and no better comeuppance. Is that the word, comeuppance? Than Captain Rhodes, Day of the Dead. So he's got to be number one on my list. So like I was saying a minute ago too, with Steele could have made this list, but I feel like Steele was just more of a just doing what he was told most of the time. Yeah, he was an asshole, but do I think he would? I mean, when he was told to shoot Sarah, he didn't immediately. He tried to joke, he didn't want to kill anybody. That's not what he was there for. He was there. He hated the zombies, which is fine. You can go back. You can put him kind of in that category with Blades, where he almost took pleasure in killing and toying with the zombies in a way. But I just don't think that he was. And again, it's a name that I definitely had on the list here, but I don't think he scored high enough on mine to make it, because I think his evil's really low. I mean, yeah, there's some bad to him, but I don't think he's a particularly evil human being. And hell, by the end of it, when he finally gets his, I don't know how much of a satisfying death it is. I mean, it's a fantastic effect, getting bit on the neck and then where he kills himself. But there's just it's a sadness. He knows he's had, he's he's at his end, and does the cross and kills him. He doesn't want to be a zombie. So I don't know. It's I don't think he's quite as evil as everybody else on this list. So I would say Steele would be my honorary or honorable mention on this. We'll put it that way. So yeah, there it is. Top 10 Romero villains. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you agree with my list, let me know. If you disagree, if you vehemently disagree and you wanna duke it out, come on the show. We'll duke it out. So yeah, this is just a fun list. I'm gonna try to do one of these once a month because it is fun. I mean, it really gets you thinking and thinking about these films and really thinking about George's filmmaking and just the way, like we touched on at the beginning of this. George was such a special filmmaker. He did things. I think that's what really separated him from other horror filmmakers, especially. George could have never made a Halloween. Obviously, I mean, Halloween is Michael Myers is the monster. Michael Myers is the evil. There's good and bad. That wasn't George's style. George could have never made, Nightmare on Elm Street like Wes Craven. His characters were just way more defined than that. Even in stuff like Night Riders, when we talked about Martin earlier. There's good and evil in everybody. There's good and evil in all of us. To me, that in my, not a religious guy really, but in terms of God and the devil, I think God is the good that lives inside of us, and the devil is the evil that lives inside of us. Because to pull from Dr. Logan, there's a reptilian core in our brains that's cold-blooded, and I think we battle with that. Everybody battles with that every day. So I think that's, if I were to give my Jerry Springer final thought, there is good and evil within all of us. And the good in us wants to create and nurture, and the evil wants to destroy. And that lives inside all of us. And in Romero's films and all of his characters, even the most noble, likable characters, they still have their bad. And I think that's one thing that really separates George's films from everybody else's. And I don't know. That's why we love the guy. That's why we love him. But anyway, I'm going to call it a night. That's your top 10 Romero villains. I'll probably hop on again. Living Dead Weekend's coming up here in a couple of weeks, so that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be doing a lot of fun things for the channel. With that going on, just posted the Misfits Scream video that Romero directed in 99. Was it 99, 2000, somewhere around there? Love the Misfits. I've always been a big Misfits fan. I've always loved that video. So check that out. It's a lot of fun. It's really one of the only things Romero did between The Dark Half and Bruiser. There was like a 7-8 year period there. So yeah, check that out on the channel. I'll be back next weekend. I don't have anything planned, so I'll probably just do another live hang sesh Sunday night of the Living Dead. Maybe hopefully there'll be something to talk about. If not, we'll just shoot shit for a little bit and see what happens. But anyway, I appreciate everybody watching. You have a great rest of the night. And of course, until next time, stay scared.